This video is sponsored by Displate. Thought you should know. Boris the Wolf! I don't know about you, but Boris has always been a favorite character of mine. He's perhaps the most prominent cartoon dude besides Bendy and Alice. In Chapter 1, we see an imperfect clone of him strapped down and mutilated. And in Chapter 3, we see a whole lot more. Boris the Wolf is quite the glutton for punishment, but judging by his personality, he's not exactly into it. He's a little bit shy, a little bit afraid, but most of all, he's a lovable dude who doesn't stray far from his passive, happy-go-lucky nature. Or does he? Indeed, Boris the Wolf is a wolf man buried in question marks and wrapped in an enigma. I'm saying we've got unanswered questions, people! There's the trivial questions like, why does he love bacon soup so much? And then there's the juicier ones like, why was he chosen to be our basically useless sidekick for Chapter 3? And most of all, why has he been cloned so many times? The obvious answer to that last one is because Alice wanted to harvest his inky organs to make herself beautiful. It did take a lot of them to make her so hot. But what if I told you it goes deeper than that? What if I told you that Boris the Wolf and his many, many copies tell us far more about Bendy and the Ink Machine than you ever could have imagined? It's all fascinating stuff. And you know what else is fascinating? Whoop-pow! Displate! You think regular posters are cool? Psh! You're crazy! These metal posters look so sleek and gorgeous and are hung up so easily with a magnetic panel you stick to the wall, allowing you to change plates out whenever. Like, I just got some, and oh my god, these things are so sexy! And plus, look at the top of the screen! They plant 10 trees for every displate! They were sticking on brand before they even met us. How sweet. And also, they've given us a sweet discount code for 20% off everything. So go on, check him out, and use the link in the description and TREE20 to get 20% off. You'll be supporting an amazing sponsor, Displate, and the Treesicle team in the process. You'll love it. Now back to it. We were talking about Boris, so let's jump back in feet first. Decades have passed since Henry left Joey Drew Studios. We've only been able to piece together a sizable smidgen of the grander picture that is the real story. But Boris the Wolf holds in his gloved hands a secret that threatens our minds with the sharp, stabby sword of truth. A truth that ties together the story of what happened before and gives insight into human nature itself. Think I'm being dramatic? Then put on a white shirt, squirt some ink on it, then draw a pentagram and then erase it and then redraw it as a bunch of weird lines and stuff because that's what they did in the remastered chapters. And prepare yourself for the story of an unassuming wolf turned into a meme for what it means to be human within the walls of hell. This is the story of Boris the Wolf. The story you never knew. First things first, let's talk about what we know. We know that Boris is a wolf. We know he's a chill dude. A solid start. But as far as his deeper meaning is concerned, we must dive deeper. We've covered the basics of Boris's personality, but there's something strange going on here. Remember, this studio has been quite the clusterfuck for the last few decades. And remember, we encounter Boris at the end of Chapter 2, just kind of wandering around. Is it so far-fetched to say our beloved wolf has been wandering these halls for a long time? What would such a fate do to someone's mind? To go further into the enigma that is Boris, let's rewind a bit. We see Boris in all kinds of posters advertising the animations he's starred in. There's sheep songs, Hell in a Handbasket, Showbiz Bendy, and more! More importantly, however, is Boris's representation in the fully animated cartoon shorts sprinkled into the lore of this game. An interesting example is Haunted Hijinks, where Bendy finds Boris just chillin' and doing his thing, which makes for the perfect opportunity to become a spooky ghost and scare poor Boris! But wait! Boris dons his own costume and spooks Bendy first. What a guy. Not to mention in Tombstone Picnic, we see Boris snarl at Bendy after getting popped with a champagne cork. He goes back to eating pretty soon after, but such flashes of anger are unseen throughout Boris's entire representation in the game chapters. Nothing you do bothers him, and when when danger is afoot, our derpy sidekick only cowers in fear. Snarling in anger and beating Bendy to the spook punch are out-of-place behaviors for Boris the Wolf. Really, anything involving assertive behavior is unusual for what we know about Boris. He's unapologetically passive throughout the games, so much so he basically becomes a damsel in distress getting captured by Alice. Whereas in these animations from long ago, Boris had a bit of a kick to him, an edge. He didn't want to ruffle any feathers unless his feathers had already been ruffled, or they're about to be ruffled. This is the true nature of Boris the Wolf. But now, Boris refuses to ruffle any feathers whatsoever. He's a shadow of his former self because of years within the walls of inky hell. Tragic, I know. Now, let's take another look at this mass grave of Boris's in Chapter 3. Don't you find it odd that our good wolf is the large majority of cartoon characters whose organs have been harvested? We do see Butcher Gang members who met the same fate, but they just aren't as numerous. There's simply far more Borises, and the question is why? Surely an answer to that will enlighten us on the gnawing secrets hiding behind those innocent eyes. Sound reasonable? Great, because the answer to why there are more Borises can be found from how the ink machine actually works. Surely there is a method to the madness that is 3D printing cartoon characters into existence, and we must identify the crucial step within that method which makes for so many kind wolves. So what gives? Well, we know these bodies that become characters don't just come out of nowhere. They originally were real-life Homo sapiens who got inkified by Joey Drew's gross weird creation, which means somehow the ink machine decides who becomes what. Most likely this is an automatic process. The machine decides which character most likely matches the person inserted, and in turn converts that person into the character most similar to them. In previous videos, you might remember we believe Joey Drew is the ink demon himself. This is because Joey's creepy, manipulative, and downright evil personality is a perfect match with the demonic Bendy. And obviously Susie Campbell is evil Alice. Her bitterness from being replaced by Allison cause Joey is a horny douchebag was enough for the sorting hat within the machine to decide, this bitch is evil Alice. And of course, decided that Allison would become good Alice. Then we've got Tom. Clearly the machine decided his mind resembled Boris's, but also decided that Tom had enough of a unique identity to allow him to retain a part of himself and therefore make a new take on Boris the Wolf. Tom Boris, although he still goes by Tom, probably. Anyway, this all points back to that question. Why so many Borises? Well, by now, that might be obvious. If it's not, let me spell it out for you. All these dead cartoons used to be employees at the studio, right? That means the ink machine decided these folks were a match for Boris, and a few of them matched the Butcher Gang. And so Boris the Wolf's personality reflects the personality of most of those who worked at the studio. We now have an in-depth understanding of how the employees at Joey Drew Studios used to be. Most of them were passive, non-confrontational, and not crazy unique in their personality. Otherwise, they would have become a distinct version of Boris rather than a generic, imperfect copy of him. They were, by all accounts, a reflection of your average Joe who isn't a dick. The ones who were dicks became Butcher Gang members. Remember, these people don't got no eccentric personality. They aren't special snowflakes. And for the ones who became fair-minded canines, they were kind enough, minded their own business unless trifled with, and they were down to poke back only when the world intended to poke at them first. And of course, a few of those studio members are more like the Butcher Gang. Aggressive, angry, willing to lash out at a moment's notice, and all around just ain't great. There's always bad apples. And so when we look at the array of characters spat out by the ink machine, we see a spectrum of personalities which reflects the spectrum of human nature itself. Bendy the Ink Demon, cruel and deceptive, a lawful evil. The Projectionist, determined, willing to attack, but only when threatened. A chaotic neutral. Evil Alice Angel, bitter and resentful, a chaotic evil. Good Alice Angel, brave and kind, to those who deserve it. A lawful good. The Butcher Gang, out for whatever they can get and simply want to be mean because it's easier to get what you want in the short run when you have no regard for others. A neutral evil. Then we've got Boris, unassuming, down for whatever within reason, but is willing to poke back if provoked. A true neutral. He is the culmination of the most common aspects of humanity. Otherwise, he wouldn't be the majority. Indeed, Boris the Wolf is your average Joe, your regular Jane. An honest reflection of the most common human personality traits distilled into one rather neutral wolf. There's no shortage of Butcher Gang members. There's the occasional ink demon, the rare evil Alice, the extraordinary good Alice, the unique Tom. But most of us are Borises. And that's a beautiful thing. And so, how tragic is it when Alice kidnaps the perfect Boris, the one who went through so much in bitter loneliness and also at our side, and the one who so exactly reflects the commonest human image? How dare you, Alice? How dare you take him from us and corrupt him into a monstrosity filled with rage? No doubt, this is symbolic of how evil can corrupt even the purest of creatures. It can corrupt even the purest version of the human mind. A mind where the most common positive aspects of humanity are seamlessly interwoven to become our beloved Boris. And so, next time you see this unassuming wolf, know you're staring into the eyes of the many. But as pretty alright as they may be, the individuals within the sea of people you encounter every day can always be corrupted by someone who aims to hurt. It's this poetic truth which stabs us in the heart when our perfect Boris is snatched away and returned to us as a homicidal abomination. That's the story of cartoons mirroring human nature. A story drenched with positivity, cause Boris is the closest representation of most humans, and Boris is pretty cool, but also it's sad because evil corrupted him and therefore can corrupt us. That's the story of Boris the Wolf. The story you never knew. And that's my take on Boris. He's quite an interesting dude, wouldn't you say? Maybe you never expected Bendy cartoons to be tied into human nature, but that's because you've imposed limits onto yourself about what's allowed to be considered. Anyway, if you liked this video, let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think most are more Boris than Butcher Gang? Let me know if you are more Boris than Butcher Gang. And also, while you're scrolling down there, don't forget to check out our sponsor by clicking the link for you in the description. And thanks so much to Displate for sponsoring this video. That's all I got for today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone!